Hello to everyone. I would like to welcome everyone that is here. My name is Miranda Phelps, and I'm the Dean of the Faculté de Travail Social et de Justice Sociale, FTSJS, which is an accredited college of social work in Bon Repos, Haiti. It's an external campus of the Episcopal University, and I'm president of Education Maine, which is a Maine-based nonprofit that helps to support the school. And before we start, I'd just like to tell you just a little bit about the school. And can you see me and hear me okay? Am I all right? Yeah, okay. FTSJS is one of the few social work schools in Haiti, if not the only one. We haven't actually been able to find out, but we haven't been able to find any others either. We offer a 4-year accredited degree with some very specific values. One is that we train young Haitian students who understand their country and their culture, not outside people coming in to have the skills and knowledge to do social work in Haiti. And our program also works really hard to incorporate local understandings, ways that are reliable and familiar in Haiti for promoting well-being and healing, along with what we in the US recognize as psychology and social work. We also have a program that teaches the Haitian Creole language, and it helps to support the school and offers a lot of skill and pride in Creole. So we are very excited to have this collaboration with the Haitian Artists Assembly of Massachusetts. It's a 10-day auction. The work in it is incredible. When work sells, it will help both the artists and our school. So I also want to introduce Charlot, except I know that you know him better than I do because I've just been meeting him through this process. But what I know for people, you know, who are new to this, he's an internationally known Haitian storyteller, poet, and visual artist. He's the founder and director of the Haitian Artists Assembly of Massachusetts, which seems to be just a wonderful collaborative, which I first knew about through the beautiful book, Migrating Colors. He's the recipient of multiple awards from Massachusetts, City of Boston, various organizations, and he has also worked for a long, long time on funding related to public health, HIV/AIDS, refugee and immigrant programs, mental health. So we are very excited to have him on this kickoff day of the 9-day auction to give a wider perspective on Haitian art. So can everybody please mute if you're not muted already as Charlot begins to speak, and then he'll have questions and answers at the end.
Thank you so very much. And, thanks again to all of our friends and colleagues who are joining this particular presentation, or who will be following us, what will be happening over the next 10 days. Because of some technical glitches, so I hope that you should be able to maybe stay maybe 10 minutes after the time, if it's possible. So with that, let me share my screen and take you to a trip to Haiti, to Haitian art. Because you mentioned storyteller, I have to say something like, once upon a time, Haitian art. We are going to look at some retrospectives and some perspectives. Now, before I start, I want, on behalf of my colleagues of the Haitian Artists Assembly of Massachusetts, take a few seconds to acknowledge the passing over the past 3 months of some major Haitian artists, pillared in Haitian culture, who passed away. Frank Louissaint was a mentor to many of the artists here in Massachusetts. He was a professor at École Nationale des Arts, the National School of Arts. Casimir Joseph was also a mentor and a teacher to many artists here who are in Boston. Claude d'Ambreville, I happen to have one of his pieces, is also an internationally well-known artist. Irrational as well. So the art community has been severely hit over the past 3 months with the passing of those major Haitian artists. So I'm hoping that this presentation will first, that's my goal, help you appreciate Haitian art in a larger context. It is not that we are just encouraging you to buy Haitian art, it's also buying the country and its culture. I also want to help deconstruct a certain perception of Haitian art, introduce new perspectives, introduce the Haitian Artists Assembly of Massachusetts, and then finally get you to think about how to support this school or these type of initiatives in Haiti. So here's one thing that we all need to understand. There is no such thing as a unique approach or a unique form of Haitian art. Some people approaching some of their Haitian friends sometimes mention, what is it about this irrational pride and exuberance about you being Haitian, when we know that Haiti is going or has been through so much, or when we know that there has been so many stereotype or demonizing comments about Haiti, yet Haitians tend to reflect or tend to present this pride and this exuberance about who they are or their past. So when I say that there is no single type of Haitian painting, Haitian art is as diverse as a people. Right now, you are looking at a collection of extremely famous people from Haiti. We are talking about the land and the landscape. We are talking about the people from particular race. We are talking about the history. So I want to give you this framework first before I get into art, because understanding this larger concept help you understand Haitian art. So who do we have here? We have Garcelle Beauvais. You may have seen her playing alongside with Jamie Foxx. We have this famous Haitian troubadour, a peasant by the name of Alchéry Dorival. We have here Daniela Ferrière, who was the first Haitian or one of the rare Blacks to make it to the French Académie Française. Here you have Ruben Casimir, a famous Haitian vocalist, died a long time ago. And here you have one of those greatest Haitian writer, painter, storyteller, playwright by the name of Franketienne. So what you are seeing here again is a mosaic of folks that give you a sense of the diversity of the Haitian demographics and Haitian population. So when I say let's place Haiti in context, I'm going through 4 slides quickly to give you a sense of where Haitian painting is coming from. That's where I used to spend some time in vacation, summertime. That's the Haitian landscape. I am giving you those visuals to help you counteract other visuals that they usually, or the media usually unload on you about Haiti. That's Haiti here. That's Haiti again. Remember, Haiti is a native Indian names, Taínos names, that means mountainous land. That's again Haiti in the mountains. Those are the kind of visuals that you need to embrace and understand that will help you understand also how some Haitian painters paint. I also want to talk about history because quickly, Haiti doesn't exist in a vacuum where it is. Solidarity that many organizations are showing or are cultivating with Haiti, I would frame this and place this in the context of the larger historical solidarity movement that has existed between Haiti and other countries in the world or in the US over the past 2 centuries. Quickly, most people don't know that in 1779, some 1,500 Black and mulatto troops were at Savannah to battle alongside of the American troops against the British. That in 1816, Simon Bolivar, the liberator of Venezuela, came to Haiti because he was losing the war, and he received some 1,500 troops, coincidence, ammunitions, and money to go back and free Venezuela. That in 1817, General Francisco Mina from Spain was trying to liberate Mexico and get a new state, and landed in Haiti in 1817 so that he can receive ammunitions and troops. Same thing happened in Cuba, where Jose Marti, the famous poet, had to go to Haiti and try to build new connections, new relations before heading back to Cuba. In 1826, the revolutionaries from Greece actually reached out to Haiti to get help, munitions, sacks and coffee so that they can sell in order to buy new weapons to continue their fight. So Haiti has been present in Europe, Greece, France, Great Britain, Savannah, Georgia, Washington, DC, Tennessee, where they have a Toussaint Louverture cemetery, Virginia, where they have a Toussaint Louverture hospital. Whatever I say here, again, please feel free to go do some more research, Google, so that you have a sense of Haiti's connection to the US or to the world. And that explains, again, their sense of belonging or their sense of connection. I also like to point out quickly, again, to place Haitian culture and painting into this historical frame. Haiti has plenty of firsts that people don't know about. The first place to abolish slavery in 1793. The first Black Republic in 1804. The first place was, according to the United Nations, investigating rape crimes in Rwanda in 2003. Haiti is the first place that, with Toussaint Louverture, passed an edict to bring to trial any troops, any soldiers found guilty of using rape as a spoil of war. Many of you may also know or not know that the Louisiana Purchase took place in 1803 and doubled the size of the US because Napoleon Bonaparte had lost some 60,000 troops trying to reestablish slavery in Haiti. As a result of losing the war, he was forced to renounce Louisiana and sell it to Jefferson. And how many people also know that Chicago was actually created by this Haitian immigrant who traveled in the Mississippi area in the mid-1790s and had the first settlement that was going to become Chicago. So pushing all of those facts to help the participant understand that there is a larger international historical framework that explains how some Haitians approach their culture and how they paint. Now, to get right in the midst of this presentation, let's do some fun fact here. Those of you who are into Haitian storytelling, if I want to shout "click," I would expect you to answer something like "quack." That's how we do it. So what's the connection between Haitian art and the African jungle? What's the connection between Haitian art and French existentialism? Between Haitian art and the painter Douanier Rousseau in World War II, and the Kennedys, and Jimmy Carter's human rights agenda or policy of 1976-77. Let's find out how Haitian art, again, has connections all over the place, all over the map. By understanding those connections, I bet that you'll be more intrigued and more interested to have Haitian art on your walls and make them topics of conversation? Let's find out. So right now, what you are looking at on this screen, and probably on my wall at some point, this is what they call the so-called Haitian primitive or naive art. Do we have in Haiti any of those wildlife animals, tigers, lions, giraffe, chimps? No, we don't. However, they are, or they've been omnipresent in Haitian painting during the 40s, the mid 1950s, 60s, and 70s. Let's see why. So let's go back to history a little bit to remember that in the 40s, 1939 to 1944, 45, Europe was going through, or the world was going through the Second World War II. As a result of the killing, the disaster, the genocide that takes place, the despair, apparently the philosophers started to think about the meaning of life. Why are those things happening? Who are we? And that's how you got concepts, philosophical movements such as the Surrealism or Existentialism that were going to emerge with Jean-Paul Sartre and André Breton. Now, coincidentally, at the same time, you had David Peters, who was an American consensus objector, who, instead of going to war, was sent to Haiti at the Institut Haitiano-Américain to teach English. So as he was biking around, he came across some folks who are using bird feathers in remnant of paint for houses and to paint little birds or houses whenever they could find a place to paint. So he got some art supplies, provided them with those materials, and now you have folks who are photo priests, folks who are either servants or domestics in some houses who got into doing paintings and bringing them to David Peters. There, you are going to have maybe the idea of the first Centre d'Art that was going to open up in 1943, thanks to David Peters and Selden Woodman. So in the same vein, around the same time, you have two groups of people coming to the Centre d'Art. Again, those folks who had no formal trainings, who may have been of the lower classes, and then others who had now a more formal trainings, who have traveled to Europe or to the US, and who also wanted to join this art movement. So the Centre d'Art started in 1943 and was going to feature two particular groupings of artists. So these are a few of those famous early artists who were part of this movement. And again, as we mentioned, some of them had received academic training, formal, Mangoudes, Sidor, Bernawa. Some of them were autodidact from the lower social classes who were either into vocational labor or house cleaners and servants or peasants with no skills at all. So that's what's going to make for a very interesting bringing together of different folks into the Centre d'Art. So the themes, so a quick thing to remember, whatever I'm presenting here is more about the contemporary emergence of Haitian arts, because expert or art historians, such as Michel Philippe Lerbourg or Gérald Alexis, can take you back to the early days of Haitian independence to tell you about a certain Haitian art. So right now I'm focusing on the one that took place in the mid-1940s and coming to today. So the ones that I mentioned again will feature prominently these type of topics: the marketplaces, the jungles, Haitian folklore, the carnival, raga, voodoo, history. And what you are looking here again are those bright colors or those very mystical themes that will characterize Haitian paintings. Let's see some of them in more details. Now, let me see if any participant, if I say Greek, can I hear something? Of course, they are not following. Now, one of these paintings is not a Haitian painting, by the way. Anyone can take a wild guess. Same way you pay the lottery. Just a volunteer. What to make sure I get this interactive as well. Okay, nobody dares. So these paintings are Haitian paintings. This one is by French painter Le Douanier Rousseau. Very famous, very expensive. He has his own museum in Paris. So this is to say that there is a connection when you think about folks who may have some travel to Africa, who have some reminiscences of Africa. In the case of the Haitian painters, you have to think about it this way. Those slaves who made it alive from the Atlantic trade, the slave Atlantic trade, came in Haiti between 1503 and 1791 until the abolition of slavery. But their parents, prior generations, would have told them about those lions, those tigers, those chimps, those wild animals of the African jungles. So the stories went on to be passed from generation to generation. Some of them would have seen maybe pictures in books, which is why, again, there was this persistence of memory, to quote Salvador Dali, where those illiterate painters kept painting things that had to do with Africa and the African jungle when they were not actually painting their local scenes. So the characteristics of those paintings is that they'll be colorful, vibrant, attention to details, we'll see a few. Some of them also very and highly symbolic and spiritual. It will take a whole course to try to decipher this particular painting here. But again, that tells you that there is something that those artists wanted to express, and symbolism and surrealism would be ways to try to express them on their canvases. Of course, you are used to that, the social life, marketplaces, oceans, those boats, carnivals, weddings, and a number of those paintings that some critics would call as part of the réalisme merveilleux, the magic realism, that is part of the Haitian folklore, that is part of Haitian culture. In general, the traditional Haitian painting had relied more on history, but not on politics. That's why. Yes, sure. I'm going quickly to mention something that I pointed out before. People like André Breton, people like Jean-Paul Sartre went to Haiti between 1946 and 1949, and then went back to France to explain, or to Europe, to explain after the Second War, this is this one place that they've been to, where they did not find either that the soul or the heart of this population was either contaminated or somehow contaminated, I would say, by what was happening in Europe, that those artists were putting on the canvas the essence of their being, their subconscious mind. And to quote Jean-Paul Sartre in 1949, saying that he's been visiting art exhibitions in Europe for 10 years, and this was the first time in 1949 that he saw an exhibition that literally made him cry. He wouldn't be the first one to cry after seeing an art exhibitions. We'll talk about André Malraux in a few moments. So there have been some defining moments in the evolution of Haitian arts. As I said, Breton Sartre paid a visit. As a result of these articles that they started to write, result of books that people like Selden Woodman wrote about the Haitian painting, as a result of André Malraux in 1970 visiting an art exhibition outdoor in the field, in the mountains, that was the concept. So as a result, he went back, and as he was writing Les Temporels, it was a universal history of art. He reduced a chapter that was to be devoted to Francisco de Goya, the famous Spanish painter, to make room for the Haitian primitive, or so-called primitive and naive painting. So when you have those intellectuals embracing Haitian arts, and then mainstream newspapers started to talk about it, now you get Jackie Kennedy to travel in Haiti to buy a piece by Philomé Aupin. You have Alfred Hitchcock, Onassis, Valéry Giscard d'Estaing, French president who died last month, now are collecting Haitian art. And snowball effect, you are going to find more people now getting into this, let's collect Haitian arts. So between 1940 up to the 1980, and then closer to us, 1990s, you'll find different schools of art. Of course, the most common one is the so-called naive or primitive painting. And then the basis of this one was in the northern section of Haiti, l'École du Nord. So there's a whole family urbain that started this École du Nord movement. It's another example, again, of Hector Hippolyte, a famous Vodou priest who got into painting. The story goes that he reported to David Peters, whom I mentioned earlier, that he was visited by some spirit, Vodou spirit, that dictated him what to paint. So now you have those artists who are painting based on what they reported to be communication with higher spirits. André Pierre was also one of the famous Vodou priests. Right here, he has a painting about Cousine Zaka in the Vodou pantheon. The Zaka family is in charge of the harvest, making sure that the agricultural goods are well developed so that people can benefit from them. So this is a representation of the Vodoulois Cousine Zaka. Now, Haitian art became more aggressive. Any tourist who's been over there also knows that art is also on wheel in Haiti. Those famous tap-taps have been used by artists, or the owners contacted the artists to have Haitian art on them. So Haitian art is not just in a closed space, like in Europe. No, we accommodate art on buses, the same way that Tiga accommodated Haitian art in the field of Soissons-la-Montagne in Pétionville. A young Haitian designer took on actually to also connect his design, fashion, to Haitian art, and to actually bring those buses or those, I call them mobile artwork, into the picture. I'm also saying that also who are into fashion design are connecting fashion design to art. Our Edna Chéry, who's one of the artists who gave paintings for the auction, right there. We'll go back to this one here. I'm also going to say that we have identified some fascinating connections. Now, there might be an explanation. So we first saw that Haitian art was strongly connected to Africa, its wildlife, its jungle. But we also found that right here, some very famous African-American artists, they have traveled in the Caribbean or to Haiti. But look at this, Paul Goodnight, you can search him on the net. Paul Goodnight is a very famous international Boston-based African-American artist. Look at his work right there. Those women are standing the way that Caribbean or Asian women would be standing in a marketplace. Right there also, women selling their goods right down. So that's, you can't help it but connect their artwork with the work of Claude d'Ambreville, whom we honored earlier at the beginning. These are works, again, by Claude d'Ambreville. So we felt that there was a nice connection between the work of those Haitian artists and some Afro-American artists here in the US. So based on what we reported earlier, let's share that now there are some new directions that Haitian art has been moving toward. We are no longer talking about, again, naive painting, primitive painting. We put it up front. It's hard or impossible or unfair, actually, to try to frame, to box Haitian painting into one style, because it's all over the place. It is as diverse as its demographics. Whether you talk about Impressionism, Giraud, Mono-Pierre-Charles, Ernst Louisant, whether you talk about the social consciousness that came through Haitian painting, we'll see a few examples, the Surrealism, the Cubism, abstract, and what I call new horizons. Haitian artists are now using murals, graffiti, caricatures to continue expressing their creativity or this need, this urge to actually get art out of their system. So I'm going to take you through a tour, put it as an informal gallery. We won't comment on each of them, but just let your eyes and your soul embrace the colors and possibly the message that some of those paintings are delivering. Now, I mentioned earlier the Soleil School of 1976 that was inaugurated by Tiga with a visit by art critic or Minister of Cultural Affairs in France in the days, André Malraux. Now, if my friend Joseph Chéry is on the call, he is one of the co-founders of the Haitian Artists Assembly of Massachusetts. Joseph Chéry would have been 17, and he was at Soissons-la-Montagne when Tiga started the movement of Saint-Soleil with those painters. So some of the most famous representatives of this movement are essentially Tiga, and then this painter, Le Roi Exil. Remember, I'm trying to sell the diversity and the richness of Haitian painting. No one would tell us that this is a typical Haitian naive painting. It's totally different from anything that you would have seen in Europe, in China, or in the US. Abstract painting, who would actually connect this with Haitian painting? Again, it's about demystifying and removing frames, boxes, and stereotypes. This painting is one of the most Haitian, among all Haitians, Franketienne, who's a hardcore Haitian Creole playwright, poet. He actually writes both in French and Creole equally. Now, his way to express his connection or his feelings or how his soul is processed by Haiti is through some kind of either surrealist, abstract, or symbolic painting. He did say clearly he's not afraid to confess that he is a megalomaniac. Megaloman, Latin. Hyperrealism. Early on, we showed a picture of Franz Louissaint, who was again a mentor to many artists here in Boston. Now, this is the work of Franz Louissaint, who passed in February. Clearly, some people might say that looks like a photography. No, that's the level of realism that he's reached into his painting. We should also say that he was hired by the Smithsonian Museum after the earthquake to help repair artworks that were destroyed by the earthquake. Another movement of the Haitian art emerged in the late 70s or mid 90s. It's called L'École de la Beauté, the aesthetic school. And some of the most prominent masters of the school would be Jean-René Jérôme and Lionel Loiseau. Again, I'm emphasizing the diversity and richness of Haitian art. Whenever you hear about aesthetic school of art or École de la Beauté, we are talking primarily about those artists empowering or presenting female shapes and contours and grace on their paintings. So the female shape has been en face, figure, visage. They have been primary topics of inspiration for those who are into L'École de la Beauté. We're also talking about Haitian Impressionism. Now, look at the work of Joseph Cantave, who is here in Massachusetts. Now, clearly, he is featuring typical scenes of Rara. Rara, that would be those group of people who takes the streets with their musical instrument, usually rudimentary musical instruments, and then they are enjoying themselves. They are creating life, culture, music for their community. So clearly, Joseph Cantave has a mastery of the impressionistic style, but you will not associate him with either Monet or Van Gogh. No, he is actually Joseph Cantave. Here is another extraordinary artist, Frantz Zéphirin. Extraordinary both by the complexity of his inspiration, his mastering of details when he is producing his scenes, and his wild, when I say wild, imagination. So you might just take his name down and then go search for Frantz Zéphirin. He also made the cover of the Smithsonian magazine in 2010 after the Haiti earthquake. Again, you cannot associate this one to the early paintings of the primitive school of the 1940s or the 1950s. This is Frantz Zéphirin from the 1990s or the year 2000s. Marilène Phipps, also a trained professional artist and writer, is painting actually sceneries from the countryside, her own style. Some might tend to connect her to the work of Gauguin, of course, but again, this is Marilène Phipps painting Haitian things. I mentioned Tiga before from the Soleil school. I think I had mentioned before André Pierre, who was a voodoo priest. Early on, we saw a painting of Cousine Zaka. Cousine, that's the female, that's the women, and Cousin Zaka, that would be the male counterpart of Cousine Zaka. They are again the same voodoo spirits who are in charge of monitoring, controlling, ensuring that the plantations, that the harvest, that the fields are well kept and deliver what they need to their owners. We should also say that Haitians have embraced other style, Cubism. Right here you have a painting by a very famous Haitian artist by the name of Val Saint-Deux. Here, it's a painting by my friend Roberto Gabriel, also known as Ruga. Again, totally different from how people used to approach Haitian painting. Jean-Claude Sainté is here in Brockton, Massachusetts. Again, it's a call where he's bringing together spirituality and surrealism. I actually was honored to have this painting to be on the cover of one of my first publications here. And it's because this painting made sense. It was a cry for something. Cubism again, our Frantz Delva of the Haitian Artists Assembly. Frantz is currently in Georgia, but look at his work. I'm just pointing out the colors, the creativity, as well as the sense of a certain patterns that will remind you of the Cubism, not of Pablo Picasso, but I would maybe venture into another famous Cubist by the name of Georges Braque or George Braque. I'm missing maybe the pronunciation. But again, these are Haitian patterns. This is Haitian art where he is connecting body parts with certain pieces that
Jim, you should come look at this.
Oh,
I think you'd like it.
those artists also have been able to connect the dots when it comes to what they live in Haiti, what they do in Haiti, and things that they actually have to deal with in their daily life, in their routines here in the US. École de la Beauté again, Justin Armand. École de la Beauté, Simeon, Luc Lazare. Here's another piece that I want to emphasize. Artists also in Haiti, that's part of the creativity. I like to say Haitians, to survive, first invented their own language, invented their religions, 18th, 19th century. They invented their paintings. And now, in the midst of misery, many artists in Haiti are picking up rejected piece of metals or anything that's no longer in use and making use of them to create beauty. Here in Massachusetts, our friend Duken Delpé has been collecting soda cans, all kind of materials that are rejected, pile them up, and then create something brand new. So this piece is right there in my office. And this one, this huge one, again, has been exhibited in many places. He has been invited to participate in art exhibitions in Japan and has been getting prizes. And now, although he is a biochemist and a nurse, Duken Delpé is making good money. I'm not talking about 1,000 or 5,000, good money selling his pieces. It's another venue that Haitian art has been exploring. My wife conveniently reminded me not to forget my own pieces here as well. Since I traveled or moved here in the US and finding out more about Haitian or missing elements of Haitian history in Haitian archives, in American archives here, I've been in this quest to understand the bonds, the connections between Haiti and the rest of the world. So this is why some of my paintings might be connected to history. That's tout son ouverture for le jour. That's what I call the oath to freedom. And that's a mythical meeting between Toussaint Louverture and Frederick Douglass. So this was your broad overview of our Haitian arts and some of the retrospectives. Let's look in perspectives. Let's look at more local. Who we are the Haitian Artists Assembly of Massachusetts. This picture was taken on January 13th, 2018, after an infamous statement made about Haiti, Haitians, and many people from Latin America and from Africa. So coincidentally, we were at the Boston City Hall where we responded with beauty, grace, dignity, and with art. That's who we are. So we've been around since 1995 in Boston, group of volunteers, artists, art lovers. We've been promoting Haitian art and culture through artworks, publications, information sharing, posting. We've been supporting young artists in rural Haiti, Jacmel, Ile-à-Vache, Limonade. We have collaborations with writers, musicians, and storytellers. We have those group exhibitions. We refer folks to artists and establish collaborations. One of our best partners, or two of them, would be Brooklyn Arts and Inside Gallery. And we've supported many humanitarian initiatives, particularly since the earthquake. This poster was part of the celebration of our 25th anniversary with those artists, including Professor Daniel George, Bitova Oba, and we continue having those things currently. We've also made l'ouverture, some openings, not only in museums and art galleries here, but at City Hall and at the State House, where the artists and their artwork, we came to celebrate diversity. We came to address the death of George Floyd. We came to say that Haiti's history has been in the US for years. Savannah, Georgia, Tennessee, Washington, DC, Virginia, Hospital Toussaint Louverture in Virginia, Cemetery Toussaint Louverture in Tennessee, statue, monument Toussaint Louverture in Washington, DC. Please do Google and you'll find why we also need to be part without any type of contradiction to the larger world history. We published in 2018. When I mentioned earlier this famous or infamous statement, this book coincidentally came exactly the day after Haiti was labeled. And we were able to claim this is what we are about and nothing about insane, improper things coming out of someone's lips. So right now we all know, I forgot to make a plug, that the book was introduced by Edwidge Dantica and by Barry Gator of the National Museum of Afro-American Art here in Boston. So right now we are talking about an auction that is taking place. And these are 5 of the artists who actually donated or actually brought their artworks to be part of this auction that you will be betting on. Joseph Chéry painted the painting that made it on the cover of Migrating Colors. So this is no small painting, as he might be able to lay down on this painting and just take a rest after his work. Marcel Mansour is one of the greatest generation of artists who took after, or who was actually in the same line as the aesthetic school, École de la Beauté. But he's been developing his own brand of shadow and light to bring something out to art lovers, art collectors. He also has a piece that's part of the auction. Our friend Fritz Duchen, who's the co-founder of the Haitian Artists Assembly of Massachusetts. If some of you are from Marmelade or Grande Rivière du Nord, in the northern part of Haiti, you will recognize the shape, structure, color, tone of the sky and the mountains. Again, Fritz Duchen has his work as part of the auction. Mimi Désir, some call her the Frida Kahlo of the Haitian Artists Assembly of Massachusetts. Wild imagination, wild technique, and I personally call her technique tropical impressionism, because clearly we are talking about Mimi Désir, both using an impressionistic touch on his, for her artwork, as well as bringing history into the scene, because right now you are looking at the colors of the Haitian flag. Nixon Léger also gave artwork. Nixon Léger has this unique connection, or had this unique connection with two of the artists who passed recently, Casimir Joseph and Frantz Louissaint. He was actually their students. So he also donated artwork for this. Edna Chéry is carrying on her head, in typical Manasara, Haitian food product sellers, this basket of fruits and vegetables. And that's, if you look carefully, a painting of her brother Joseph Chéry, by the way, just a coincidence. And the beautiful story about the Haitian Artists Assembly, about a decade ago, Edna Chéry lost her son and was going through moments when she connected to her brother and connected to the assembly and decided to get into painting. So this is what Edna Chéry is producing today when it comes to painting. It's one piece that's part of the auction. She is also a high-end, sophisticated designer, fashion designer. So that's her near the work of our friend Yuvlin Joseph. So do go and then look at the auctions, the paintings, and please bet. So let's end by telling you that the Haitian Artists Assembly has been supporting, as we mentioned before, some other activities in Haiti. We've been buying art supplies to send to the kids of Ile-à-Vache. They are producing their own artwork, or they are following the steps of Mimi Désir by paintings on rocks that they pick up, stones that they pick up on the beach of this island by Haiti. We've also supported Jacmel through the Jacmel Art Project in collaboration with Brockton Arts, where me and my friend Anna Linger, she's a French curator at Harvard, we've been to Jacmel, saw the artworks, brought back the artworks. This was after the earthquake, when those artists had decided to maybe drop their trade because there was no more market. Earthquake, right? The place is destroyed. They lost their houses, their brushes. So what we did, we took supplies, canvas, paints, brush to them, gave them what they needed to paint, brought back their artwork here in Massachusetts, sold, and sent them back some money. As a result, we were able to also start a training program for the youth of Jacmel. So that's them, HAAM, Haitian Art of Massachusetts, and their instructors. Our partners are many: Brockton Arts, City of Boston, Museum of Afro-American Artists, Boston Center for the Arts, Boston Foundation, Faculté de Travail Social et de Justice Sociale, et Haiti Nurse Foundation. When they come to us, we give donations or we help do fundraising to the extent that we can. So how you can support? Please do support organizations such as the School of Social Work that's doing this type of work in Haiti. Do buy a painting by those artists. Part of the proceeds go to the work happening in Haiti. I would tell you also, go buy the book. Go buy the book, meaning make sure that you order one of those books. We'll give you the contact and share our information. So I want to thank the local staff at the Faculté de Travail Social et de Justice Sociale of the Université Episcopale d'Haïti. I want to thank Miranda Fels, Chéry, and her staff for putting together the coordination. The artists who gave artwork for this, Mimi Désir, Joseph Chéry, Nixon Léger, Marcy Mansour, Fritz Duchen for their artworks. Joseph Chéry did a wonderful job coordinating the auction. And the pictures that I showed you, most of them are by extraordinary photographers, Yves Rigaud, Chris Pendragon, Venita Belchamp. And I also want to give a shout out to my wife, Evangeline, who was able to get me through this presentation and remove some of those typos that still make their way. Merci, Evangeline. So do contact us, cglconsulting1@gmail.com or 617-306-6400, or you can also visit us on Facebook. Anyway, you can use the links that were sent, and then from there you can get to us. So
I think you may have some questions because
Okay, so I'm gonna stop it there. I don't know that you all want to listen to the questions from the other group. Do you? Are you interested in that? Or would people like to just comment and say something? We don't have Charlot here because it was recorded from last week, but be happy to hear any thoughts that people have about it. Anybody? Yeah. You're muted, Glenn, you're muted. Wait, let me, yeah.
Well, I just wanted to say I appreciate it, and I learned a lot. I mean, there's so much more diversity than I thought. So I'm sort of blown away and sort of taking it in. You know, I mean, I think usually, I don't know. I mean, I think the first paintings I saw were much more what I would think of as Haitian art, which is probably my own, you know, ignorance. But I just appreciate seeing this, and thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's quite, I know, I felt the same. I've had the book for a long time, and we've been getting the artwork in for the auction, but the breadth that he showed was just incredible. Yep. Anybody else want to add anything?
Can I ask one other thing?
Yeah.
So do you think that, I can't remember this man's name, but what is his name?
Charlot Lucien?
Charlot Lucien?
Charlot Lucien, yeah.
Do you think that they're looking for places to show their work? I mean, I'm in New Hampshire. I don't know if that's something they're looking for, or.
I mean, I think he might be open to talking about that. They're well known in the Boston area. You know, they are well known, they're well loved, they're well respected. They show a lot. I think like everybody, they've really suffered in the pandemic because, you know, people haven't done in-person things like that. But I would say if you're interested, get in touch with him. The two contacts, I could give you both. One is Joseph Chéry, who we worked with really closely, and then Charlot Lucien, who, you know, they're all very involved. They're all very central to it. So, you know, it's certainly worth a conversation if you're interested.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else like to say anything or add anything? So if not, I just want to encourage you to go to the art auction. We have one more day, and the work on there is also very diverse and very beautiful. And I'm going to send the link to everybody who was here, because I know some people came here because they knew about the auction, but some people got to the presentation in a different way. So I will send you the link so you can go and see the work on the auction and hopefully consider bidding. It's also a place where you can donate to the Faculté de Travail Social et de Justice Sociale, FTSJS, which is the College of Social Work and Social Justice in Haiti. We have one person here from there, Franketienne, who is the campus manager there. So I'm really so glad you're here, Franketienne. Yeah, it's great. So, okay, anybody like to add anything or say anything, or should we just say thanks for coming and good evening? Yeah, yeah.
So Oh, I'm sorry, please go ahead.
Yeah, Francio, go ahead.
Yeah. So hello everyone. So I can say, as Haitian, I really appreciate his thought and like the picture, everything. I really appreciate it. It's really nice. Thank you.
Yeah, good. Yeah, thanks, Francione. Glenn, did you want to add something?
Well, I just wanted to, I was just wondering if as part of this auction, you did any sort of extensive introduction to the school and what's happening at the school? Because I don't know that much about the school, actually.
Okay, I'd be happy to say more. So the school is, we think, the only school of social work in Haiti. We've gone back and forth and tried to find others, and we really haven't. So I think it probably is. It's located in Bon Repos, although with the pandemic and with the current violence, we've had to move everything online. Not so easy in Haiti because the internet is a little iffy, but we are just constantly troubleshooting so that courses are happening online. We have a combination, we're affiliated with the Episcopal University, which is how the school is accredited. Our students are really quite incredible. And actually, I've been thinking a lot lately about some of the kinds of conversations we have in classes where we're kind of juxtaposing what we bring as professors with what they bring as people living there and living in the culture and knowing the situation there and all that. But we have a combination of American professors. All the professors have masters or doctorates, American professors, and a number now of Haitian professors who are teaching with the school. We're always juggling languages because the students all speak Haitian Creole. Some of our professors teach in Haitian Creole, some teach in French, some, like me, teach in English but are translated. We have a student who's also a staff member who translates. But, and actually this week we had a real landmark. We had, because, well, we're built on the shoulders of another school that started and spent 6 years and taught social work, but never became accredited and had a lot of issues. And so we have students, even as we started a few years ago, who were close to finishing. So this week we had our first student who did what's called a soutenance, which is like, it's like a dissertation defense that students have to do at the bachelor's level in Haiti. And it was quite incredible. They are challenging. The people are not easy on the person. It's very challenging, but she did wonderfully. And so she's on the road to finishing her final project and graduating. So if anybody else has questions, I don't know if that covered enough. I'd be glad to answer more.
Well, I think, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say hi to Lucius Osius, who is one of our students, or who has been a student in the past, and he was briefly a student again. Lucius, I just want to remind you that we are graduating people now. If you are just
final project
disponible pour vous, okay? Et aussi Jean-Enoch Francion, même chose.
Oui, merci.
Okay. Sorry, I couldn't resist.
Yeah, we have 16 people who really have done almost everything except the final project. And when we affiliated with the Episcopal University, they said, okay, you have all these people, they studied at a different school, it was not accredited, but here's what you need to do. They have to take a 2-semester class to pull everything together, which they did, and they have to do this final project, which is, I mean, so demanding, 60 pages and this intense defense. But they're very, I mean, they're very gifted students, and so they're very much capable of it. So.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
I mean,
Hi,
that's good.
hi, Professor Roger.
Is that Lucius?
Yes,
Wait,
I'm
it
here.
is. Hey.
Yes. Thank you so much. It was a very nice presentation. And thank you so much for the good news, Professor Roger.
Yeah, Caroline was the one who did the soutenance, you know. So yeah, we're waiting. We're just waiting for everybody to do that. That's going to be a really, really happy situation.
Okay, that's nice. That's nice. I really happy to hear that.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's good news.
And so I'm looking forward to talk more about it. I want to have more information.
Awesome.
Yeah. I'll email you anyway about it.
Oh, that's good.
Please.
Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Roger.
Hey, good evening,
Hi,
Mark.
Ian.
Right to me.
I just want to say it was a really good presentation and thanks for compiling all the different paintings. But will you be having a part 2 to this, like looking at other artists or different art pieces by the same artist you did today?
Well, this was, you know, as you saw, the presentation was done by Charlot Lucien, and it's part of this, what we're now finishing, but was a 9-day art auction. So we have hoped that this would be the first annual. You know, this is the beginning of a collaboration between our school and the Haitian Artists Assembly of Massachusetts. So I would imagine that when we do it again next year, there will be programs like this. There will be programs that highlight Haitian art. But if you're really interested in just learning more at this time and getting more involved, I would contact them. They have a Facebook page. There's contact information. I would contact them because they're quite prominent in the Boston area. And I know, you know, everything got slowed down with COVID, of course, but I know that in the past, they've done a lot of exhibiting their paintings of those artists all over the Boston area. And so I would get in touch with them directly if it kind of stirred up your interest, but also visit our auction. Who is it that's
Okay,
speaking?
thank
Sorry.
you.
Who is it speaking? Because I can't see.
Okay, when exactly is the auction?
The auction has been going for the past week, and it's going through this weekend. So today and tomorrow are really good times to get in touch with it.
Okay, can I ask, please, kindly, if you could put the information for the auction in the chat, because I actually have a friend of mine who's actually of Haitian descent, but your tickets were already sold out, so he couldn't join this forum. So I will just take off the information and forward it to him, and then he can forward it to his other
yeah, what I'll do, it's very long because the short version wasn't working. So I thought I would email it to everybody who's here.
Okay, that works, thanks.
And can you give me your name just to make sure I have it here?
It's Sandra Harris.
Yeah, okay, I have you on the list. Yes, I definitely do. Yeah, I was just gonna email, it's the short link, for some reason people aren't getting there. So I'm just gonna send you the full long link. It'll be very easy for you to get there. And if you would share it, that would be really wonderful. That would be great.
Definitely will, because unfortunately the tickets were already sold out, so he couldn't join on. So I'm going to tell him all about it. So he was interested in this, and I sent him some other programs that were going to go on with different organizations. So he'll definitely want to look into that. Thank you.
All right, thanks. All righty. Anybody who would like to add anything? Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. And it sounds like people enjoyed it. I'm really glad. And if it, you know, connects you with the Haitian Artists Assembly of Massachusetts, that's great. I will send you the link to the auction, and I'll also send you the link to our website, the website of our school. And yeah, it's great to have everybody here. It's great to have Lucius and Francione here from Haiti. That's awesome. So thanks so much.
Thank
All
you.
right. Yeah. Good night.
Have a good night.
Nice. Thank you, Ian.
Yeah.